Welcome back to the Resolution Room, where we turn tension into transformation through clarity, connection, and consistency. I'm your host, Dr. Nishay Lowe, and in this space, we explore what's really underneath the moments that challenge us and how they can lead to something more honest, more human, and more whole. So let's get into it. Today, we're talking about something many of us struggle with but rarely admit: avoiding the conversation. Maybe it's the talk you keep putting off with your partner. Maybe it's the unspoken tension between you and a coworker. Or maybe it's the boundary you haven't set because you don't want to rock the boat. Whatever it is, you've already told yourself, now's not the time. You rehearsed what you say and then decided to just let it go. But it's never really gone away, is it? This discussion will be broken down into 4 segments, and we will explore why avoidance happens, what it costs us, and how we can build the courage to return to the conversations that matter, even when it feels uncomfortable. I'll also share insights from research on conflict avoidance and emotional regulation, so you leave with real, practical reflection points. Segment 1, what avoidance looks like. So let's be clear about something. Avoidance doesn't always look like fear in the way we expect it. Sometimes it looks like politeness, changing the subject, making jokes, and keeping things light. Sometimes it looks like overfunctioning, like taking on more responsibility to avoid a needed conversation. And sometimes it even shows up as excessive kindness, like appeasing others to sidestep expressing what we really feel. Psychologist Harriet Lerner, in her work, The Disconnection, talks about how conflict avoidance is often less about fear of anger and more about fear of disconnection. We aren't always afraid of the other person's reaction. We're afraid that the relationship itself might not survive our truth. You might recognize avoidance if you change the subject every time the issue comes up, overcompensate with kindness instead of speaking your truth, or tell yourself it's not worth it, even when it clearly still hurts. At a biological level, according to research on interpersonal neurobiology by Dr. Daniel Siegel, our nervous system craves safety. When conversations feel risky, emotionally, socially, or professionally, our system often defaults to protection over connection. Avoidance isn't weakness, it's a survival response. But over time, it becomes a kind of emotional self-betrayal, one that erodes connection both with others and within ourselves. Segment 2, the cost of not speaking up. Here's what happens when we avoid conversations for too long. We don't avoid the tension, we internalize it. The silence doesn't create peace. It creates resentment, it creates confusion, and it creates emotional distance. At work, you might find yourself withdrawing from collaboration thinking, what's the point? Instead of addressing misalignments. In a relationship, you might find yourself smiling through dinner, but emotionally shutting down afterward. Even in friendships, you might keep attending social events, but feel yourself pulling back from intimacy and vulnerability. In Crucial Conversations, a book by Patterson, Grenny, McMillan, and Switzler, the authors highlight how silence, unspoken grievances, and withheld thoughts builds pressure beneath the surface of relationships. Eventually, that pressure either leaks out sideways through passive-aggressive behaviors or explodes at an unexpected moment. Avoidance gives us the illusion of maintaining harmony, but what we're really doing is quietly withdrawing, one unspoken conversation at a time. And the longer we stay silent, the harder it becomes to find our way back to honesty. Segment 3, how to know you're avoiding. Sometimes avoidance isn't as dramatic as ghosting someone or refusing to engage. It can be more subtle than that. Here are some signs you might be in an avoidance right now. You replay a conversation in your mind, imagining different outcomes, but never actually have the conversation with the other person. You feel low-grade irritation towards someone, but convince yourself it's not a big deal. You hope someone will just notice you're upset without you having to say anything. You feel stuck, silenced, or smaller around certain people, but you can't clearly name why. In nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg notes that unmet needs are often the root of emotional discomfort. When we're avoiding, it's often because a real need, like respect, clarity, or belonging, is being brushed aside for the sake of keeping things peaceful. And so part of waking up from avoidance is simply asking yourself, what conversation am I pretending not to need right now? No judgment, just curiosity. Because when we name what's being avoided, we reclaim our ability to choose. Segment 4, returning to the conversation. So here's the thing. You don't need a perfect script to reenter a hard conversation. You just need enough clarity and enough courage. You can open with honesty. Tell the person, there's something I've been holding on to that I want to work through with you. Or, I didn't know how to bring this up before, but I realize it does matter to me. Or, I'd love to revisit something that I stayed silent about earlier. You're not required to have all your feelings perfectly organized. What matters most is the willingness to speak from care, not blame. And if you're not ready to talk to someone else yet, start with yourself. You can write it down, take a private voice note, or talk to a therapist or trusted coach. Psychologist Susan David, in her work on emotional agility, emphasizes that naming emotions reduces their intensity by up to 50%. Just the act of articulating something like, I'm nervous to bring this up because I fear being misunderstood, can help ground you enough to move forward. Avoidance thrives in silence, but it dissolves in presence. And presence begins with naming what's real. I want to leave you with this. If there's a conversation you've been avoiding, ask yourself, what story am I telling about what will happen if I speak up? And then ask, what's the real cost of staying silent? Sometimes the conversation we're avoiding isn't the one that will destroy the relationship, it's the one that could heal it. And sometimes the person we're avoiding isn't the other person, it's the part of ourselves that wants to be honest. Remember, it's never too late to return to the table, and it's never too late to rewrite the story. As always, thank you for joining me today in the Resolution Room. I'm grateful you're here doing this work alongside me. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to please share. And until next time, keep building in the quiet because that's what will carry you forward.